Good.
Hi everyone. How are y'all
Hi,
doing?
good. How are you?
I'm fine too, thanks. So, it's summer for you, everyone?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I still got my exams. I won't finish until 29th of June, so it's still basically school, so.
Oh, well, you're almost there, and I wish you the best of luck on your exams.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, I believe these are all of the people that RSVP'd, so we can get started. Avani, would you like to share? Yes, and Bhumika, do you normally share the entire screen or just the tab? Just the tab. I think that works best. Okay, let me. Can you guys see that screen? Let's
See it.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, perfect. So I hope you all had a chance to read the article and, just grasp the general gist of, what our age is and the very basics of age-range signaling, as well as how ITCs play a role in blocking or reducing the harmful effects. And so if you can go to the next slide, there are a few discussion questions. Okay, perfect. So how about we all start by sharing one or two things that we learned from the article? Emma, do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, first, I didn't know I think I'd heard the idea of ages before, but I didn't know exactly what they are. So, advanced glycation end products. And um, I thought it was interesting in a later point in the article, it said they occur naturally over time, like the human body naturally starts to produce them as you get older, but they are significantly increased with the unhealthy lifestyle. So, with the traditional American lifestyle, there's a much higher percentage of those in the system. So this article is researching ways to combat that, and one way that was found was the isothiocyanates or ITCs, and this was one question I had. Um, I know they combat the ages. Do they solely prevent them from forming, or after the ages have formed, do they help with getting rid of them?
That's a wonderful question. And by the way, your summary is amazing. But yes, so that's a very good question about how specifically ITCs end up blocking and mitigating the effects of ages. And what the article found, which it basically just looked at the existing literature and then based on that consolidated it. But what it found was that ITCs, it basically blocks ages from binding to RAGE as well as it enhances age detoxification mechanisms. So I don't believe that it specifically stops ages from forming necessarily as much as promoting healthy, um, healthy natural mechanisms so that it can combat ages, if that makes sense. But yeah, Avani, would you like to share something that you learned and found interesting? Yeah, sure. So I agree with Emma. I found it very interesting how isothiocyanates are found in everyday cruciferous vegetables and how they have immense antioxidant potentials. I found that to be very, very helpful in deciding, whether to eat spinach versus a pizza, which is definitely a hard, hard choice. But yeah, I was able to resonate with the article you contributed to, Bhumika, because in 10th grade, my whole project was about natural phenolic compounds, which are these plant-based phytochemicals and plant antioxidants. And so I do recall reading about a little bit about isothiocyanates, and so it was good to see that there are also different forms of antioxidants. So I found that to be very interesting. That's wonderful. And yes, I was doing research on this and I was just immensely surprised at how important it is to eat cruciferous vegetables. I was reading about how, in cruciferous vegetables, these isothiocyanates or ITCs, they have such immense potential in that they have anti-inflammatory properties, anti-microbial, antioxidant properties, all of which can just overall enhance your well-being. So it's just amazing that when your parents tell you to eat broccoli and other cruciferous vegetables, it's actually really good for you. So, yes, but I guess as an avenue and a segue, did you guys find any other questions that you had in addition to what we already discussed?
Okay, I think I haven't yet shared my the things that I found interesting.
Oh, I'm
If I
sorry. I don't.
may.
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. So, first one is actually more of an affirmation, not something new that I've learned and I've got interested in. But I've always heard that if you overcook or heavily cook, not necessarily overcook, if you heavily cook veggies and even fruits and just food, generally, it just loses some of its potential. So it can be, more, I mean, less beneficial to the body, but more beneficial if it were cooked, less heavily. So, as it says here that, heavy cooking can just affect the myrosinase that could, that would stimulate, let's say, the hydrolysis procedure so that the glucosinolate precursors can be broken down to ITCs. So that's one thing that I really found interesting. And the second thing is more of a general idea that the types of vegetables that we'd rather, not eat in comparison to, more popular foods and the ones that we consider like tomatoes, and even though tomatoes are considered fruits, I guess sometimes, and potatoes and, so just the cruciferous ones like lettuce, broccoli, asparagus, I think is supposed to be included, but I didn't come across it. So yeah, that's just the idea of cruciferous veggies. So yeah.
Those are wonderful pieces of things that you found interesting, and I think it's really important that you brought it up, especially because I was looking, and a lot of research does corroborate that whenever you cook something way more than you need to in processes such as grilling or frying, then that definitely does end up reducing the nutritional value of the food. And I also did read that whenever you overcook something, that ends up actually increasing the amount of ages that are formed, which I found really interesting because then you're eating all of these highly processed foods that have high fat and high sugar content, and you're consuming it, and then that's just resulting in a lot of age accumulation, which ends up causing a lot of aging. Yes, and I also found it interesting going off of what Hadi, Bhumika, and Emma have stated. I found it interesting because this gives a direct link between ages, which can occur based on how you cook a certain meal. And it basically correlates with cooking processes with various diseases that are implicated with ages. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think ages are implicated in all sorts of diseases, such as Alzheimer's disease and diabetes, cancer, etc. And so it shows the importance of eating healthy and how that basically can lower the risk of developing all sorts of diseases. Is that correct, Bhumika? You are absolutely correct. And I actually want to ask you all a question just to see if you guys maybe have an idea. But why do you guys think that people with diabetes have a lot of age formation? Do you guys have any ideas? Is it maybe because of inflammatory pathways and how ages result in more inflammation in diabetes? You are on the right track. What about you, Emma and Hattie? Do you guys have any ideas?
I know this article mentioned hyperglycemia, which is higher blood sugar counts, and I know that the it mentioned glycoxidation, which is when sugar and oxidation combines to form ages. So maybe it has something to do with the higher sugar content in the blood
Yes, you're
maybe
even closer.
oxidizes better.
Yes, and that's perfect. And Hadi, do you have any ideas about it?
Well, I think it's just that I get the general feel of it because, it's just called the glycation end product. So from glycation you can get a sense of, I think, stuff that's related to like the glucose, or like just sugar type. I don't know, there's a specific scientific word to it, because diabetes is concerned with sugar. So these are kind of like sugar variations, I guess. And because it's a consequence of the Maillard reaction, I think this is how it's supposed to be pronounced. That's how it just accumulates in the tissues. So I think, yeah, it does have to do with diabetes, but I don't know exactly how or why.
Well, all of your thoughts for all of you guys had the right idea, it's perfect. And I can quickly just explain a little bit, but you guys have already said it. But yeah, so diabetes, as Emma said, it is hyperglycemia. And so what that means basically is high blood sugar. And what happens is that people with diabetes, so they have high blood sugar for very long periods of time. And that extra sugar increases the chance of it to interact and bind to proteins, such as that in your skin, which is called collagen. And so, whenever the sugar is binding and interacting with proteins, that ends up resulting in ages. And as Avani and Hadi have said, more ages end up resulting in more cellular damage, inflammation, and oxidative stress. And this is what explains why people with diabetes end up having a higher risk for problems such as heart disease, kidney failure, and nerve damage such as neuropathy. Oh, and that makes a lot of sense actually, because I think the article mentioned how ages, so advanced glycation end products, those are sugars irreversibly attached to proteins, and so higher amounts of sugar mean higher amounts of ages. Is that correct? Yes, there is a figure that we will be going over, but yeah, basically the overall gist is that ages are sugars that are irreversibly bound to proteins. But there are specific scientific names in the article that one of the figures addresses, and we can discuss that as well. But yeah, does anyone else have any questions or anything to add before we discuss the figures? One of the questions I had was, could one tiny receptor like rage be the root cause of many chronic diseases if it interacts with age molecules? Yes, that is definitely a great question, and I'd be happy to answer it. And Emma and Hadi, you can also chime in if you have anything to add. But yes, rage, it's just one little receptor, but whenever ages end up binding to it, that ends up triggering major reactions that were discussed in the article. And these these intracellular signaling pathways that are activated, that ends up resulting in inflammation, right? It causes inflammation and ultimately oxidative stress. And so while inflammation is important in immune responses, the problem is that ages excessively activate rage, and this results in ongoing chronic and persistent inflammation. And this ongoing inflammation, that's what's been linked to diseases, chronic diseases like cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative disease, so all sorts of diseases. But yes, so rage is definitely a receptor that is very beneficial to, looking into, to targeting it and seeing if there's any influence in disease progression. But that's a great question. Anything to
Okay,
add?
may I ask a question, please?
Oh, of course. Go ahead.
Okay, so as it's written in 2.1, I think, it says that, the precursors themselves include, I guess, or comprise, beta thioglucosides, and it also mentions that myrosinase is a beta thioglucoside sidase. So if the myrosinase itself is included in isothiocyanates, is it included in it?
So you said it's in 2.1?
Yeah, so that myrosinase is within the ITCs themselves when they're just the glucosinolate precursors, non-reactive.
I believe it is. Let me try pulling up the article. But yes, because I believe that I did do some research and I found that that is a precursor, but it can also have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties that would end up allowing it to somewhat mimic the properties of isothiocyanates. If that answers your question, but let me try pulling it up and seeing.
Okay, no problem. No problem. I mean, but I just wanted to know that, if it's just within the body of the precursor, I guess. So when it's, physically damaged or something, it just breaks and the myrosinase could come into contact with the, you know, what could stimulate it to, so that the hydrolysis could happen. I just don't know how to phrase it properly.
Yeah, from what I'm looking at, it says that myrosinase is an enzyme that would produce isothiocyanates, so maybe it's involved in, hydrolysis pathways that would produce these smaller molecules of ITCs. Did that kind of help in any way?
Well, yeah, it's fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Sorry for not being able to answer that question to the best of what you needed, but yeah, that's what Avani said. That's also what I found, and I was thinking, but that's definitely a really good question.
Thing I wasn't sure about with myrocyanites as well is it says that it's found within the human gut microbiome after the ingestion of cruciferous vegetables. And later it talks about during clinical trials, they have to make sure the person has enough myrocyanides, otherwise the ITCs won't be created. And I'm curious for like practical application if I were just to eat a bunch of cruciferous vegetables, would do humans naturally have enough myrosinase to create enough ITCs to combat the H's, or is like a supplement of myrosinase required to get the full benefits?
That's a very good question. I did not even think about that. But what I would assume is that myrocyronase, so I would assume that it could be like the expression could be increased in the genome through epigenetics whenever someone is consuming more cruciferous vegetables, but I also think that if there are more elderly people their epigenetics may not be functioning as well as, say, a person who's younger, I would assume that then they would have to take supplements. But that's a really good question. I believe it would be an interplay of epigenetics and as well as age and just the overall health of the being. But yeah, I'll let someone else chime in if they have anything to say. I think that was also a very interesting question. I would think that taking supplements for myrosinase might be it might not be as effective as having it naturally in the gut microbe just because taking supplements might be difficult to absorb in the gut, in my opinion. So I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that I hope that the gut naturally has a lot of the microcinates just so we don't have to take it exogenously. But Hadi, feel free to chime in as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, I think it's just supposed to be like any other supplement, that it depends on the condition, the current condition of the person and their general build and how healthy they are, and also what they consume as, part of their diet, because as we've seen in the article, cruciferous vegetables, are, if I can say it, the primary source for getting ITCs, isothiocyanates. So it just depends on the person themselves.
Yes, but great question, Emma, and I'm definitely going to have to do some more research to get back to you.
It's interesting what you said about how everybody probably has different levels. It makes me wonder if there's like an easy way to measure the somebody's levels of myrosinase.
Another interesting question. Guess we're all going to have to dig deeper and then come reconvene and talk about our findings about Emma's questions. But okay, is everyone okay to start discussing the figures? Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is figure one. And how about, does everyone want to select one figure? Because I believe there were four figures. So how about everyone selects one figure and then we can reconvene, discuss, and then just talk about each figure. Does that sound good? You can just put your selection in the chat and then we can have like 2 minutes to just think about the figure and discuss.
Okay, excuse me, if I may comment on this, I think it might be a little hard, for us, on our own, for each of us, to analyze each of the four figures. So I think if we can maybe just discuss, like, collectively each figure, like in a shorter time, um, just, so we don't like get too lost in digging for more info, because this is gonna take up time and it's gonna be harder for, if we didn't cooperate, I guess. So if you're okay with that, I think we can just discuss them together.
Okay, yeah, we can discuss it if everyone wants to. I just want like to make sure you guys are learning about how you can observe figures and just read them because a lot of science figures are really challenging. So what I was hoping is maybe you all can maybe take a few seconds and minutes and just look at what it's saying, just observations. You don't have to dig that deep into it because we'll talk about it. But like for example, this figure right here, right? It has a lot of really long names. But what I'm hoping that you guys can do is look at the figure and then somewhat connect it to the rest of the article and discuss what is the major takeaway. But if you guys feel more comfortable with just discussing it as a group, we can also do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get your point, but it's not about the idea of discussing the figure itself. It's about this figure that, you can see you can deduce much info. You just need some background to know what these compounds are and how they would contribute to age and range and the isothiocyanates. So it's more about the background than the figure itself.
Yeah, I agree with Hadi. Personally, whenever I looked at the figure, I just saw these various compounds and their names. So I think why not we just start off the discussion and just see where it takes us from there. For instance, I do recognize methyl glyoxyl, MgO. I feel like it definitely is associated with age pathways and might be involved in inflammatory pathways and everything. Okay, yes, that's perfect. We can definitely go over it. So, yes, Avani, methylglyoxyl MgO, that has definitely a huge implication in age formation. Do you remember what methylglyoxyl is? Nope, I do not. Does anyone remember reading a little bit about it? If not, we can also go over it.
Unfortunately, I don't think so.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. And so I believe the word is reactive carbonyls. I believe that was referenced a few times in the article, But do you guys know what reactive carbonyls are before we go over what methylglyoxal is specifically?
I think what I know is that carbonyls that in order for a compound to be considered a carbonyl, maybe it should have the H and O added to it in some way that, they just combine. I don't know, the scientific terms for it because our chemistry book is in Arabic, so I'm just trying to, kind of recall some terms, but I'm not able to. But I think you can also notice the H and O being here, with the carbons. So I think that's what defines a carbonyl. But I don't know how it relates to isothiocyanates.
That's a great observation and starting point. Emma, did you have something to add?
Well, I didn't end up being able to research carbonyls, but I did see them a lot throughout the article, and they seemed to be mentioned a lot when oxidation was mentioned, and definitely in a negative light, they seem to be mentioned. So I'm guessing they have something to do with the oxidation and stress for the cells.
Yes, you guys are spot on. So, Hadi, to answer your previous question about what a carbonyl is, so it's a C double bonded to an O. So, a carbon double bonded to an oxygen. And yes, they're very highly reactive molecules, and I like to think of them kind of like the harmful building blocks of ages. And yes, Emma, you're absolutely right, because reactive carbonyls end up speeding up tissue damage, as well as promote inflammation and end up aggravating and progressing chronic diseases. And the main thing is, as well, is that our body sometimes can't efficiently get rid of these reactive carbonyls, and so that ends up like producing ages that then do all of the negative effects that we discussed. But yes, so methylglyoxal, that's a specific type of reactive carbonyl. And that's the main type that ends up serving as a precursor to forming ages. So does that answer what methylglyoxal is? Yes. Perfect. So yes, so it's a great point that you all brought up because as you can see in the figure, section B, that is reactive carbonyls. So that's exactly what we just talked about and how they're intermediates to forming ages and are very dangerous when they react with other biological molecules like proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids like DNA. So what do you guys think is trying to be said with section A? I personally think they're just giving various structures and showing the bonding linear structures between all of the relevant ITCs. Maybe by showing the chemical composition of these structures, we can deduce the actual properties and maybe therapeutic potentials of the molecules. But that's my opinion. So, what do you guys think?
I was thinking it was the chemical structures of the ITCs too. I was wondering with like the chemical application of this, when ITCs combat ages, are they chemically bonding to them and somehow like neutralizing certain things, like maybe neutralizing the carbonyls? Is that how it works with the chemical bonding?
So, your question is how chemically ITCs combat ages? I believe that's discussed in Figure 4, so maybe your question will be better answered in Figure 4. But yes, what you guys have said is absolutely correct. Hadi, do you have anything to add about Section A?
Section A, it's the relevant isothiocyanates, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, this was forfeit. I don't think I would have much to add here, but I've noticed something about about section B actually. That in figure 2 it says that reactive carbonyls have to react with electrophilic amines in a process called non-enzymatic glycoxidation to form ages. And so they it fuels this process, so it leads to age formation. So I think it's more related to, the formation of ages rather than IGCs, which are supposed to combat ages.
Mhm. Yes, you perfectly explained that. Is there a specific confusion that you had with that?
No, no, it's just an observation.
Oh, okay. Well, that was perfect. Absolutely spot on. Yes, and I think we have about 8 minutes for the meeting, so why don't we try to get through figure two as fast and best we can? Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so do you guys have any initial observations or main takeaways? I feel like we've talked about a lot of this, such as like the oxidative stress and reactive carbonyl stuff, so let me know if there's anything new you guys observe.
One thing I thought was interesting is we know that the ages, they're the end products and they're irreversible. But I think it said it in the article, not just in this, that for the Schiff bases and the Amadori products, when I guess the molecules get to that stage, they can still be reversed. It's only when they get to ages that they can be, that it, they can't be reversed. So I thought that was interesting.
I think an observation oh, sorry, did I cut you off, Bhumika?
Oh, no, no, you can go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I think an observation from this figure, a pretty direct one, is that the non-enzymatic glycoxidation process is pretty reciprocal or reversible, if I may say. That, from the arrows, you can see that the amyloid products can go to carboxyl and amine, and, vice versa, from carboxyl and amine to form amyloid products. But, the amyloid products turning to ages and, leading to chronic disease and all that stuff, and lifestyle being a significant contributor, is not reversible. So I think that's the major idea of this figure.
Yes, and I'm so happy that you both brought these points up because I wanted to also show you guys how ages, I know how we've been saying that it's basically a sugar and it irreversibly binds to proteins, but as you can see, it's more than just that, right? It's a complicated process and it has Schiff bases involved and amidori products. But I also found it really fascinating how there are so many ages that can be formed even whenever it's a very complicated process. So I found that to be pretty interesting. But you guys perfectly summarized it, so good job. Oh, okay,
Okay,
are we? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but I just noticed something. It says in figure two that what seems to be fast food, or what's supposed to be fast food, pizza and burger, it's exogenous age exposure. So is age supposed to be formed in fast food because of the way it's prepared or something? That when we consume it, we just get exposed to getting ages?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, so glucoxidation happens in fast food.
Yes, and that's specifically what's called the Maillard reaction. So I'm sure that whenever you guys toast bread, you see how there are all of those burnt looking spots, those charred spots. Those are ages. And so you're absolutely right. These are preformed ages that are in fast foods, and ages can be obtained exogenously as well as in the body.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering.
Of course. Great question. But yes, so I see we're running out of time and I really want to get to figure three and four. So yeah, so do you guys have any observations for figure three? Is it describing an inflammation pathway? Yes, exactly. It's describing the age-range signaling pathway. And as you guys can see, whenever ages bind to the receptor RAGE, then that ends up phosphorylating and activating this entire signaling pathway that ends up with NF kappa B. Do you guys know what NF kappa B is?
It's supposed to be some sort of protein because maybe this happens inside the cell, so it's related to proteins.
Yes, so nuclear factor kappa B, so that's a transcription factor, but it's very important for immune responses, inflammation, cell growth, and cell survival. And it's activated by various stimuli like inflammatory molecules. But what happens in cases like this signaling pathway is that basically, whenever the age-range signaling pathway happens, that ends up activating this molecule. And so then NF kappa B moves into the nucleus and then turns on genes that promote inflammation. So this is getting more into the nitty-gritty about how age's binding to rage ends up causing inflammation. And exactly, Hadi, I just saw your chat, but yes, the lower graphic does indeed depict the nucleus.
Okay, and I think this is not a reciprocal process, it's more of a repetitive one because I think as you can see when we get back to the final product, we can just get back to the very beginning and it happens again, but with different factors again. But yeah, I think that's also one of your observation.
Yes, and that's actually such an important observation because this whole thing, I hope you guys realize, but it's actually a vicious cycle. And so it's not just like this is the reactant and this is the product, but it's mainly a whole cycle where more oxidative stress results in more age formation, which results in more rage activation, and then more chronic inflammation and tissue damage, and then more oxidative stress. So it's just a whole ongoing cycle. Yes, exactly. Variable factors. Yeah, and I think we have about a little over 1 minute left. So how about Bhumika, why don't you give us a little summary of Figure 4, and if we have anything to add in the time allotted, we can add that. Sounds good. So mainly what Figure 4 is saying is that ITCs may block AGEs from binding to their receptor RAGE, and this would stop RAGE from activating harmful oxidative, excuse me, oxidative and inflammatory pathways. And at the same time, ITCs help boost the age detoxification pathways that reduce age formation. So yeah, that's the main thing, but if you guys have anything to add, feel free. I personally also liked how the arrows denoted that this is blocking the development in this pathway. I think the arrows are very important in figures. Oh
I
no, we
think
have
just
less than a
one.
minute.
Okay, now I'm sorry. Just a quick observation. I think one recurrent theme is the lifestyle factors, so that it heavily contributes, regardless of what the, the person's genes or their health. So I think it's supposed to be pretty manageable because lifestyle is such a significant factor in it. So.
Exactly. And hopefully you guys see how you need to eat your vegetables, your cruciferous vegetables,